giving feedback? Yes?
Besides doing some red marks on the paper, often what I do is I take like one sentence from each of the papers and write them up on the board, with mistakes, and then ask them, what mistakes, do you see here? How do you correct the sentence?
Okay, so that's more of an individual one, and that's a general one. Yes, Kim?
I use an individual rubric.
Okay, a rubric. Great. So you guys hit the nail on the head. Annotation, very, very common. Some of us use a rubric and then give general feedback by writing individual sentences on the board and turning it into a game, maybe. Right? So, basically there are different kinds of ways where we can give feedback. Majority of them fall into verbal feedback, or even like written feedback. But you know what happens after that? How do we know if the feedback in which we give the students was effectively uptaken? And how do we know in which the method in which we gave the feedback was effective? Because we don't want to be wasting time. Is it all just fun and games? It has to lead to something. Okay? So, when it comes to feedback and second language acquisition, we're mainly concerned with two types, namely implicit feedback and explicit feedback. So what is implicit feedback? Implicit feedback is the inadvertent indication that an error has been made. And even after giving the student feedback, the student might not know exactly what that error is. This in contrast to explicit feedback, which is a direct indication that this is a mistake and you have made an error, and the student becomes immediately aware of what that error is. For example, you can do implicit feedback and explicit feedback instead of not gold, went. Or if you're doing implicit feedback and explicit feedback in writing, you could have said in implicit feedback, is this sentence correct? As opposed to telling him directly that this sentence is wrong. Okay? Now, what do you guys think? Do you think that implicit feedback is better or explicit feedback is better? Yes?
So what I do is papers, and then they will be working in groups. They will be having this type of paper, and in group they will be trying to correct those mistakes.
Okay, so would you define that form as implicit or explicit?
It is explicit.
Explicit. Okay?
Because I tell them before that in each
That
sentence there's a mistake.
There's a mistake that they're wrong. Okay. Now, actually, both have their advantages and disadvantages. We cannot generalize that, okay, maybe implicit feedback is better because it teaches their students to learn their errors independently. And some might argue that explicit feedback is better because, for young learners, they need more direction. But, to be honest, the efficacy of both types of feedback depends on a number of factors, such as age, language proficiency, cognitive ability, language skill being learned, as well as short-term and long-term learning goals. And because our learners are so diverse in their abilities in terms of what they want to get out of their language courses, we cannot just apply one type of feedback. And I encourage all of you to use, actually, both types of feedback. Which brings me to introduce to you the SFR method. So what is SFR? S stands for student input, which is their writings, implicit and explicit feedback, and rewrites or refinement. Okay? And usually in this SFR method, we repeat the process such that it becomes a cyclical process of feedback, practice, and eventually improvement. Okay, so how does it work? So as I've mentioned before, it relies on implicit and explicit feedback. It encourages students to practice what was learned during the feedback. Okay? And it also allows teachers to assess and monitor how well the students have absorbed the feedback and also the way in which you have given the feedback. So I'm going to give you guys an illustration. For example, let's say I would like to teach students how to write an effective paragraph. So I first teach them how to write an effective paragraph. What's a topic sentence, supporting sentences, and then you have your concluding statement. Then I give them a writing task so that they can practice what they've learned. Then I go through, I think all of us go through the regular marking, the grading, and then we give them feedback. And we can give them feedback in two ways. Individual feedback and also, as well as general feedback. In individual feedback, as what some of you in the audience have mentioned before, you do affirmative correction, so you indicate checks and whatever you like, okay? And error indication, you circle the errors as what a young man over there has mentioned, okay? Now, after giving this feedback, we want to check if, if students have learned from it. So what we can do next is we can assign a second writing assignment, testing the same writing skill to see if, students have learned. And what I usually encourage my students to do is I like them to rewrite or refine their first writing assignment. Because for me, I believe that more practice allows for perfection of a skill. And I usually encourage them to do rewrites or make tiny corrections. I add on the marks for the grading from that. Okay, now I would like to draw your attention to general feedback. Now, as mentioned before in the audience, some of you put sentences on the board, right, or turn them into an activity for them to to identify their errors. Now, those are very good for errors like punctuation, grammar, spelling. But what about macro errors like essay structure, cohesion, What can we do? So this is what I do with my advanced classes and also my upper intermediate classes, is one method. I actually take samples of their writings. I change the words a little bit, okay? And I make them anonymous. Now the reason why I do this is because I want students to be able to learn from their peers as well. So there's peer learning involved. And not just taking any sample essay from online and just saying, look at how he does it or how she does it. Because if you use work from students themselves, it gives them a sense of ownership as well. Okay, and then what I do is I ask them to decide which sample is better or the best. Now this is in a way implicit feedback because it also is a way for me to assess their knowledge of the skill. Do they know what is wrong and what is right? Okay, now after the students and the teacher has reached a conclusion as to which sample is the best, the other remaining samples are overtly obvious that they contain errors. Okay, so they become aware that the remaining samples have errors, and then they have to justify what these errors are. Okay? So in doing so, it's also feedback for the teacher. Have your students learn from the example sample? Do your students know already what this target skill is and how to write it well? And finally, after doing this, you can either choose to refine the target writing skill, or you can choose to just move on to the second writing assignment. Okay, so I've given you guys some samples of how I conduct this feedback session for essay structure. Some of you have sample 2 and some of you have sample 3. So basically the first sample I teach writing skills, second sample I pluck a few sentences or a few paragraphs, get the students to learn independently, correct themselves, okay? And then I tell them to rewrite their essays. So, what are the strengths and drawbacks of this method? First of all, for the strengths, the teacher can track the students' progress. Okay? And also, I'm sure in every ALC, yes? Oh, sorry. I'm sure at every ALC, how many writing assignments do students usually have to complete? How many? 4, 3, 2 writing assignments. 2 writing assignments. Okay, so I recommend for this method at least 3 writing assignments so that you can actually see that the students are progressing and actually learning from what you are teaching them. Now, second strength, students are given repeated practice. Now, because writing is a skill, it can be learned and it can be perfected through multiple practice, repeated practice. Now, this allows you to build on target skills step by step, so you don't have to just teach them everything in one shot. It can actually be guided practice. Okay? And with more practice, you can actually help them to master the skill. Lastly, It encourages independent learning because they learn from their peers, okay, they look at samples, they talk about it, it can even turn into a discussion session. So there are many skills that you can bring in, listening, speaking as well, but giving writing feedback in this manner, explicitly and implicitly. Now, with every strength, there are some drawbacks. First and foremost, it's time consuming. Time consuming to create material like this. Okay? Secondly, might limit the variety of writing assignments. Some teachers might like to be creative and say, I want to give my students a dialogue to write for their assignment. Or I want them to do like an email or a poster. Okay? If you put everything on paper like this, and encourage them to keep writing like academic essays, it might limit the creativity. Okay? And it also results in additional grading if you are encouraging your students to do rewrites. Now, there are some solutions for these drawbacks. So, about being time-consuming, there are a lot of readily available material online. So, things like how to write a good topic sentence. All of this, you don't have to think about them yourselves. You can actually go online to Oxford, a lot of material out on IELTS websites. They can teach you that. So, all you have to do is just collect samples from your students. Get them to ask the general question, quiz question, which is the best one? Why do you think it's good? Okay, and teach the techniques, all of the solutions and tips, they're all online. About limiting the variety of writing assignments, well, you could focus on one writing type per level. For example, juniors could be doing postcards, small, short emails, notes to their parents. At intermediate levels or even like beginner levels, they could be doing narratives. And then go on to like descriptives, and as they go higher to advanced levels, they can work up to expository essays and then academic argumentative essays. Or you could just experiment with different types of writing styles in class as mini writing activities. Finally, if you don't want to do additional reading, just omit the rewrites part and go straight into the second writing task. Right, I would like to focus now on focusing on one writing format per level, okay, as a future solution, future application of this SFR method. So, can I confirm that every ALC has a structure for their program? Juniors beginner 1 to 3, beginner 4 to 6. Yes, pretty much. Okay, great. So, can you imagine? I just recall that the SFR method is a process of practice and feedback, practice and feedback. Now, can you imagine if at every level we focus on perfecting one writing type and a certain writing skill? Okay? Now, with the SFR method, as the students progress through the ALC curriculum, with the SFR method, they can actually perfect and reinforce and develop and finally improve different types of writing skills and be exposed to even different types of writing formats. Okay? So what the SFR actually encourages is a build-up of skills as they go through the ALC curriculum. Alright, so to summarize, corrective feedback in writing is important, and I encourage you to do it both explicitly and implicitly. Okay, one way to do this is through the SFR method. Alright, so the SFR method is beneficial because it provides two-way feedback, not only feedback for the students in their writing, but also feedback to the teacher in terms of the way you give feedback. Okay? And it also encourages for practice and progression, leading to mastery of the writing skill. Finally, the SFR method, as a future application, can be applied to all levels, and this would allow for reinforcement and development of writing skills. Okay, finally, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Joseph Hubert. Okay, he says that when you go in search of honey, you must expect to be stung by bees. What do you think that means? Any takers?
Hard work.
Yes?
Hard work.
Hard work. Yes, yes.
Take the bad as good.
Take the bad with the good. Okay? need to be patient. Okay? Now, yes.
Just wanted to say that there's a truth about this. On the roller coaster,
Yes.
you say that once you want, if you want to,
Sorry, I couldn't catch the first part. If you want
if
to,
you want to reach honey,
yes.
you have to go through these.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know. So it's coincidental that it's a Moroccan proverb. I must have been very lucky when I chose this. So basically, it's what encompasses what all of you say, you know? If we want our students' writing to improve, as teachers, I'm sure we want the best for our students. We should be prepared to put in some effort in order for our students to grow in that area. Okay? So I encourage all of you to, you know, don't neglect writing. Like, give it a little effort, give it a little love, give students feedback, both implicitly and explicitly, so that their writings can improve. Thank you very much. And if you're interested in implicit and explicit feedback in second language application, these are some interesting papers by very renowned researchers in this area. Thank you. What questions have you have? Yes?
Thank you for sensitizing them to this, that academic writing is one thing and speaking is another, and merging them while writing is not really
Yes,
appropriate.
so it brings me back to my future application of SFR. So if you see, as we go through, if we apply SFR and emphasize it across the different levels, and we emphasize that as you go, if you look at the target writing skill, from beginner onwards we look at narrative structure. That's when you know they can still write as they speak. As you go up to like intermediate 1 and 3, or even intermediate 6, narrative speech advanced, it starts to be more academic. So you have to enforce, as a teacher, you would have to encourage students that, you know, you have to write in a more academic tone. And because at every level, you have three levels, so it gives enough room for the students to develop. Because I think one course is about 2.5 months. So there is enough time for students to practice and develop. And if they go through the whole ALC curriculum with this SFR method, yeah, they would develop the skill, and when they finally finish Advanced 6, they would be able to write academically. Inshallah. Yes?
Can I ask you to just move back a couple of slides?
Move back.
Sorry.
Do you remember what? Okay,
There was a large graph.
a graph. This one.
Yes, this one. Sorry. Thank you.
How do you handle plagiarism? One of my big problems with writing is that a lot of my students just love to copy things they saw on the internet. And I've been struggling with, like, this is not useful, I can read the internet too, what have you learned?
Oh, I see. Is this for a take-home writing assignment or an in-class?
Yeah, well, take home.
Take-home.
Yeah.
Yeah. The writing assignments here that I'm talking about are usually in-class writing assignments. In-class writing assignments. I think for take-home, there is actually it's called, I think academic institutions use it, but I can't get the website at the top of my head. Where you can run it. Yeah, Turnitin, yes. Turnitin. It's a website where you can run through, you can plug in the essay and they go through, and then they give you a plagiarism point. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, please.
Very good presentation. Thank you for the great information about writing. Sometimes I like to do a little bit of peer correction. You know, maybe they swap papers and try and find. Do you think that could work with this method?
Yes. Actually, when I talk about giving feedback, this SFR method, the focal point is actually you assessing the method of feedback you're giving. So when it comes to giving feedback, either individually or general feedback, you can do it any way you want. You can play a game, you can do peer feedback, you can do recording. But the essential thing is, after teaching all of this feedback, how do you make sure that what your students did during that activity, that whether they actually learned or not? Because if they don't learn during that activity, then it's just all fun and games. Yeah. So that's the benefit of this method. You want to use the second writing assessment to assess if your students have learned during that feedback activity. So it doesn't limit the way you should give them feedback. Yes?
Just for teaching. For teaching, I always believe that for each version of what you write, there must be a better version. So, which means if you wrote a paragraph, and then you corrected the paragraph, you gave it back that, and then you try to refine it.
Yes.
You make it more feedback again and refine things. And so there is no perfect version. So whenever you give feedback, you may refine and new things.
Yes, of course. It's always a continuous growth process. But if you look at the future application, it would be nice if we can start this from very low, from juniors, and take it all the way up to the advanced level, so that they have, students have enough time to grow, they have enough time to develop a skill, because everybody has a different way of learning. Some people might not catch up in this level, they might not perfect that particular skill in this level. But if you keep reinforcing it as you go up the different stages, then eventually, at some point in the upper levels, they would have an opportunity to actually master that skill and then add on and develop from there. Yes. Any other questions? Yes?
Well, I believe that we can use both types of feedback, both implicit and explicit at the same time. In a way that it's a two-phase process. You can actually see or look for the reason why students are making mistakes. Okay. Because sometimes mistakes are overlapped with errors. Okay. And sometimes I believe that when it's a test, students rush or hurry to jot down the answers, and so it should be a single test. It should be a single test only on writing, a writing test.
Yes, yes.
And I believe that writing should not really be graded or corrected. It should be praised if it's that good, and if the students are not really good at writing, it shouldn't be tested that way. Maybe we can test another scale instead, maybe speaking, for example, because it's not an everyday thing. Not everybody is good at writing.
Yes.
A lot of intervals are involved in the same equation, and you cannot really.
Yes.
You should.
A lot of our students want to get the
Go for the TOEFL.
So they're going to have to be able to do this.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, like in the beginning, our learners have different motivations for why they come to the ALC. Some may just want to learn English just for the fun of it. Some may want to do the TOEFL at the end, hence they go through the entire course. But as at the ALC, I think we have certain assessment structures, criteria, such as we have to do like 4 quizzes or 4 writings. So it might, I understand that some students may not want to do the writing, but because they go through the system of the ALC, they have to still do it. And as a teacher, we have to cater to what the majority would like. Yes?
What's your reaction when it's like, oh, everyone in my group said my sentence is asked?
Oh, I don't copy directly. I actually change some of the wording, so students cannot really credit it, oh, this is my paragraph, or that is my paragraph. So there isn't any like kind of internal competition saying like, hey, that's me, that's my best, I'm the best one. So I do change the wording a little bit. So it is similar to their sample, but it's not the exact sample. Yes?
One last question,
No,
sorry.
no problem.
When do you get to show to the students that they have to move from writing 1 paragraph to writing a 3-paragraph or even a 5-paragraph essay?
So
and of course the appropriate layout for both types.
Okay. So with regards to like, for example, let's say like academic structure, usually we do a minimum of 4 paragraphs. For my first and second writing assessment, I usually train for paragraph. So I want them to do a perfect paragraph. So I teach them how to write a paragraph, and then I give them the first writing assignment. Then I give them feedback. I tell them how to refine certain mistakes that they have made in their first writing assignment. Then I give them the second writing assignment, also a paragraph. And then in the third and the fourth one, I get them to, because if they can master how to write a paragraph, they would be able to do the conclusion and the introduction well. Because the conclusion and introduction is just like a mini summary of the points that they have in the main body of the essay. Okay, so I do the full essay in writing assignment 3, give them feedback on the full essay, and then have them practice again in the fourth writing, a full essay, 4 paragraphs. Yes?
For the feedback, how do you, I've been working with feedback for students like...
Sorry, feedback, sorry.
Yes, I've been working on getting my students to each other feedback, but how do you make sure that the feedback is like not just all negative and critical? Like what techniques for like team building are you using? So that the feedback is just not like always harsh.
Yeah, so if you, like in the handout that I've given, I usually say like, okay, what is good about this paragraph? And I wouldn't say that every paragraph is perfect, like no sample is perfect. They can always be improved in some way, or they're always like good and bad to it. So I would ask students, okay, if this is the best, what is good about it? Or what is also not there, you know? What is lacking, okay? So there's always both ways. I like to balance it in that way. And even if it's like a verbal comment, for example, if you pass around, turn it into an activity, you pass around little scripts of sample writings and you tell them, okay, what's good about it? Now tell me what's bad about it. So you can balance it in that way, so it doesn't become just all negative. Yes. Let's see. For example, you could have given, let's say, let's assume it's like juniors or beginner level. Okay, that sentence structure. If you were testing for the past tenses, right, then you would focus more of your grading on the past tenses and not just the sentence structure. Even if it might be grammatically correct but awkward, I would focus more on the target grammar. And then if I think that the student can benefit from knowing that this is a mistake, I would just, tell him when I give him or her back the paper, like, we don't usually say this way, we say it the other way. So you should, yes, I'm just talking.
Which way is better? If you find a spelling mistake in the paragraph, would you highlight the mistake and correct it? Or just highlight it and let your students correct it?
Okay.
Which one is?
So in my first writings, I usually correct it. But in my second and third writings, I give them a legend. Because I want them to learn by themselves. And I think students, they should be challenged a little bit. If they really want to learn, they would put in some effort. Yes, but I agree with what the man at the back said. Some students may not be there for writing. They might be there for speaking or reading. So we give the students flexibility. Hey, if you want to put in effort to improve your writing, here's a chance for you. Correct your mistake. I can give you a little bit more points on your writing. But if you don't want to, that's okay. I'm not going to force you to do it. It's the onus lies with you. If writing is not a skill that you want to focus on, that's okay. You can focus on other things. But we give the student flexibility with that. Yes?
On date that they haven't seen, okay? And tolerate things that may be errors that they haven't yet reached, for example.
Tolerate errors that they have...
Something that they haven't seen yet, for example.
Yes, and so it's, I think, as what I think he asked a similar question, what are the errors that we should tolerate and what are the errors we not? So it really depends on what you are marking for, what is the target grammar that you're looking for in the writing assignment that you give. Yes?
The best thing to do to help this problem is to try. One of the things that we can do here is to try and collect the maximum number of errors that students have been into, in which they haven't learned before, and then provide kind of a remedial work. And while doing the correction of the remedial work, you can really go into things that you feel your students need most, but you should not really focus on every single thing. Otherwise, you make it kind of demotivating for the students.
Yes, and it's also demotivating and exhausting for the teacher to grade and highlight every single error mistake that they have on their script. So it really depends on the teacher. Like if you want your students to perfect this grammar or this skill, then you focus more and you grade more for that one. Yes. It would be things like structural errors like grammar, spelling, mechanics, and macro errors would be like style, tone, essay structure, cohesion. Yes. Done. Okay, thank you everyone.